Hello. So this is the follow-up to the last video we did, talking about my spiritual journey through my finances, and we left off where I did not get the duplex, and the purpose of that was to show me that I can trust Brian Moore. And the banker upset me by telling me I had no business buying a duplex because I had no money. I thought I had a lot of money. And I prayed to God. I said, you know how I feel about money, but money is how they keep score down here. So help me with that. We had bought 2 houses, and that was 1 year after we closed on the second house. Now, I believe it was that year. No, not yet. So anyway, all the way through, I always saved money. And in 2021, we bought our 3rd house, and that was 1702 South College. And I thought I paid a lot of money for that. I paid $62,000. And it didn't need a lot of work. It needed a paint job, and we rented that bad boy out. And in fact, I had it rented before we even were done painting, because it was a friend's kids that rented it, and they were good. And that 3rd house was now a ministry house. But we bought that one, and then in 2022, we saved $40,000 that year. On top of what we already had, that meant I had a little over $70,000 in cash. That also was the year when Chris Lawrence, my banker, asked me for a financial statement, and I thought he was updating his records. A couple of weeks later, he calls back and says, hey, we're going to let you spend up to $150,000, but don't go over. You can do anything you want with it. So I said, okay. So right after that, we bought our 4th little rental house, and that would have been 2605 South College. That house needed a lot of work, and we closed on that house right after Bonnie moved in here. And that would have been Dave Collier's widow. Dave died in a canoe accident back when he was 22 or 3. And he had a little baby. His name was Matthew. And he had a widow, and her name was Bonnie. Well, I found out through Facebook that Bonnie was now homeless, and she had run out of money. She spent her money on a hotel room, and today was her last day. So I told her she could stay here until she got back on her feet. So she moved in right after we closed on that house, and after she got here, her son came in. Matthew is now a grown man, 45-year-old man, and he was homeless. And so we helped Bonnie. We did some things. We paid some bills for her. We got her into the high-rise she wanted to go to. We paid the first month's rent. She put on 20 pounds when she stayed here. She was only here a couple of months. And she was getting healthy. She had hurt her leg. So this was an important time for her. And while she was here, I met Matthew. And Matthew was homeless, had no job, and I wanted to try to help him. And I've done videos on Matthew, and he absolutely drove me nuts, but he did help me with 2 houses to help get some of the grunt work done. And in the meantime, we still had about $150,000 or $100,000. Let's see, what was it? We had about $90,000 left we could spend. So every day I was looking for a different house, and I had, actually Bonnie took over, and she was looking at houses every day, and then when I came home at night, I'd go over them, and then the ones that I liked, I would contact Brian Moore, and he'd check on them. And we did this for about a month, and so Bonnie was getting ready to move out. She gotten her stuff, made all the arrangements, and the night before she moved out, she found this little house on East Knox. And we ended up paying a little over $68,000 for it. They were asking $67,900, I think. And so we put an escalation clause in there because I knew that house was going to go fast. That's a nice house in a nice area. So we put an escalation clause in there, and we exercised it for $500, I think. So anyway, so we got that house, and I refer to that house as the Collier house. And I'll tell you, those two houses and the banker, I mean, what banker just asked you for a financial statement and then calls you and tells you, hey, we want to loan you money? What banker does that? Bankers don't do that. That had to be from God. And Bonnie moving in here, what are the odds of that? I haven't seen her talk to her in 40 years. And we close on a house just before she moves in, and I buy one just the day she moves out. That has to be God. So, in the meantime, I'd been working with Matthew, and I made him a sweetheart deal on the house at 1702 South College. We were going to turn that into an Airbnb. I was going to put up the money, the house, the furnishings, and all that, and he was going to take care of cleaning and keeping the yard mowed. Well, as I said in the first two projects we did, he aggravated the living shit out of me, and trying to get him to do anything is impossible. So we went to college, and I dealt with him for a month there. And he did absolutely no work at all, and that was going to be his equity. So I had to hire things done that the yard was one, the furniture, selling my shit. It was just a big nightmare. And so I said in one of these videos, I said, I feel like it's from God, so I'm going to honor it, but if he walks away, I'm not going to honor it. I'm going to consider that my answer. And sure enough, he walked away. I hated to see that because I was giving him an opportunity. He had the opportunity, and he screwed it up. And I realized afterwards, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So you can take a homeless guy to a house, but you can't make him work. So it is what it is. Again, God stepped in, because as soon as Matthew left, Chris stepped in. That would be Brian Moore's wife, and she is my stager. Got the house all ready, and she's now the manager, which I pay a very pretty penny for. But we're getting 5-star reviews. The house looks great. We increased the net worth, and everything. It was a win-win-win all the way around, and that's how I know it's from God. If God's not involved, somebody wins, somebody loses. If God's involved, everybody that's involved wins. So, and that's where we are now on the spiritual journey. Brian has been blessed since our meeting, because he's sold me a little over $300,000 in real estate. He's sold Blake around $500,000 in real estate. He gets all kinds of side jobs from both of us through remodeling and landscaping. And now Chris is being blessed with our Airbnb, and I couldn't be happier. So as we wind down this video, I want to talk about some of the lessons that I've learned, and some of these I knew, but knowing something is a lot different than knowing something. And now I know that I know, some lessons. And the first one is God has a plan for all of us. Sometimes we stand in the way. I kept getting in the way of God's plan for me because I thought I was in charge. As soon as I got out of the way and got Cindy out of my life, God went crazy, and it was great. I now know that. God's timing is always perfect. That's another lesson I learned. If he had done this when I was married, I probably would not have been able to do it because, well, first off, if Cindy, if I were married to Cindy, she'd have blown every penny I ever had. And I tried to do this with Teresa, but I wasn't saved, and everything I did was wrong. So God had to wait till I got out of the way, and he could help. His timing is perfect. Another lesson I learned is what I just said a minute ago. When God is involved, everyone that's involved is blessed. Everyone. In that example I told you about Matthew won. Short term, but he won. All that stuff from all those properties he took and sold, he made money. He made about $1,000 in cash off of me, plus another $1,500 in stuff he sold, plus he got a new computer out of the deal. So he wins. In his mind, he wins. And he doesn't have to deal with me crawling up his butt because he's not doing his job. He doesn't want to work, so he wins. And another lesson that I learned, and I had learned this before, but it just continues to be true. In order for God to be a blessing in your life, you need to learn to listen and obey. Whatever God says do, go do, to the best of your ability. You know? If he says say something that sounds outrageous to your realtor after you leave a closing, go do that. If he says go buy another house when you leave a closing, go do that. Listen and obey in all things. Is that easy? Absolutely not. But if you do, God will bless it. And another lesson is what I just said. Whatever you turn totally over to God, he will bless. When I was sitting at the table, I turned my finances over to him finally and completely because I had nothing. I had nothing left to do or to say. I had no money. There was no budge in my budget, and I had no money to live on. So I turned it over to God. Did he do it immediately? Yes. But he also did it long term. He gave me the $1 raise per hour, remember? But he had to wait till Cindy got out of the way to start blessing my finances. Another lesson I learned is our ministry is about helping people with their finances, teaching it, showing it, helping them. We had 5 people, 5 houses. I don't think that's a coincidence. I'm hoping for somebody else to come through. And each one of those people that we helped, God brought them to me. So I'm looking forward to number 6, 7, 8, 20. And one of the last lessons that I learned, and this I haven't really talked about in this video, but I wandered away from God. I was like in the Bible, the sheep that got stuck in the bushes. I just wandered away, not intentionally, but I just wandered away, and before I knew it, I was in deep trouble. And the lesson that I learned is no matter how far or how long you wander away from God, if you're saved, he will come get you. Now, he may have to get your attention, and he did get my attention. But when he got my attention, I realized in an instant how far away from God I was. I hadn't read my Bible in 3 years. I started back. I prayed all along, but I hadn't been reading God's Word. My heart had not been being blessed with His Word. Not only will He not only will He come back and rescue you, but He will continually love you. He will remember that you are saved, and He will bless you. All because of His Son. Now, these spiritual truths that I have learned, the spiritual journey that I have been on through my finances, has blessed my finances for sure. I mean, there's no question at all about that. 4 years ago, I didn't have a dime. Today, my net worth is about 130, and hopefully by the end of next year, it'll be over 200. So that's not even a question. And in God's mind, He's like, why are you so happy? This is nothing. I can bless you over and above. And I know that. But what I have learned through the blessing in my finances, I have learned through all of my life. I mean, through all areas of my life. As an example, because of the finances, God took nothing and made something. God took my spirit, which was unsaved at 40, and in the blink of an eye, I was saved. My finances, I had to turn over to Him completely. I had to turn my spirit over to Him completely, my heart completely. And when I think back on that, and I think about every area that I had turned over to God, He's been faithful to bless it and save it and multiply it. I mean, when you think about the fact that I make $15 an hour and I'm 64 years old, I've bought $300,000 in properties in the last 4 years. I'm going to save $50,000 in cash this year. That is amazing. $15 an hour is just a little bit over minimum wage. A contrast would be Blake. This year he will make $506,000 and he's bought $400,000 in properties in 3 years. No, that's great. I'm happy for him. But God is not blessing that. If he were, Blake would be well over $1 million in properties right now. Now I know what he's doing. Blake has got a good head on his shoulders. He's saving as much cash as he can because he wants to buy an Airbnb down somewhere on the ocean. And I get it, and that's great. I hope he does it. But if he would turn his finances over to God and stop trying to do it all himself, he'd get much further, much faster. But whatever. My point is, when you think about the circumstance that I was in, that I am in, and that I will retire in, the fact that I have anything is amazing. The fact that God continues to show up and to bless the things in my life is amazing to me. I mean, as one that just hit me is my health. I've had 2 heart attacks, open heart surgery, thyroid problem, diabetic, and I turned my health over to God. Now, I don't eat sugar. I eat 3 salads a day. I make my own lunches. I don't go out and eat very often. I'm exercising. I've lost about 40 pounds. 45, I guess. And I'm getting my strength back. That thyroid thing damn near killed me. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was almost dead. And I'm getting my strength back. I'm lifting weights a little bit, just trying to keep from getting flabby as an old man. But my point is, I turned it over to God. And all of these lessons that I have learned because God blessed and did all the things in my finances. Now, did I know he was doing that? I knew along the journey that there were things that was from God, like when I told Brian about the duplex the year before it happened. Or that I didn't lose a dime in that first house when he didn't pay rent for 13. I knew God was involved, but I did not realize the grand plan that God had for me. And it wasn't just about my finances. It was about my soul and my spirit and my walk with him. Everything that I have turned over to God, he has blessed over and above. I can't think of anything else I haven't turned over. Because if I did, I'd turn it over in a heartbeat. And that's the lesson that I have learned in my spiritual journey through my finances. Now, most people will never understand. How do you have a spiritual journey through finances? Before it happened to me, I had no idea. I didn't even know that was possible. But now that we've reached this point, and I look back on it, God opened my eyes. And he said, you know, he has showed me that this is no accident, Brian. You're not in charge here. You're not doing this. I'm doing this through you, and I'm doing it so you will learn a lesson, many lessons. And so I have. Now, some of these lessons I knew in my head, and I've learned in the Bible. But there's a difference between knowing it and living it. And I've lived it. Was it a fun journey? No. It was not fun being broke for 15 years. I mean, flat ass broke. I started this job making $7.50 an hour. And how I survived, I have no idea. How I paid for my car after my accident, I have no idea. I still don't know how that car got paid for. But we paid it off. Because God had a plan, and I needed to get to that plan. Did I know it at the time? Absolutely not. All I knew was listen and obey. And I made an agreement with God when I first got saved. Because I noticed that a lot of Christians would say things like, God told me to. And then I would look at what they were doing, and it never got blessed. And I'll give you a good example. I was thinking about this the other day. Greg Brown in our Bible study class was talking about this new sports complex. And he got one of the guys in the thing to say he had a vision. And this vision was that Albert Pujols was going to come up and be involved in building this thing, and it was going to be blessed. That was 20 years ago. There's no sports complex. They tried to get one up and running through man's power, but God said no. Things fell apart. They got started. They spent a lot of money. Didn't happen. They couldn't get something. I don't remember the details. But they always kept saying, God said, God showed me, God get. You know, I kept thinking, well, if God's showing them, then why aren't they being blessed? So I made an agreement with God. I said, I'm not doing anything. I'm not saying anything, I'm not doing anything, and not moving anything until I know that 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 it's from you. And then I'm just going to go do it. And when you bless it, then I'm going to go tell people. Telling people that you're going to do it in advance gives you the glory. Telling people about it after God does it is giving God glory. And that's an important lesson. Jesus has already died. But we tell people now about what Jesus did. And that's how they get saved. Some will learn if you tell them in advance. Most won't listen because they have no faith. They won't believe. They have to see it in the pudding. And that's what Jesus said he needed. He needed a witness, not a prophet. God had prophets in the Old Testament, and they all got killed. God did not say, or Jesus did not say, I need prophets. He said, all I want is a witness. Go be a witness. Well, you can't be a witness if there's nothing to witness to. I can witness to what I know in the Bible, and I can witness to what's in my life. And when there's a blessing in my life, and I know that I know that I know that I know that I know it's from God, I'm going to give him glory. And that's been my agreement all along. That's why I teach on finances, that nobody's watching. And that's why I try to help people with their finances in person. Because when I see the successes, I know that that's from God. Now, these people may think they're just listening to me and doing what I'm telling them, but the information is coming from me by God. And he's going to bring the people that he chooses to bless. Well, I can see that I'm running out of time. This spiritual journey that I have been on for my finances has been an extremely fulfilling experience. Going through it a lot of times was fun, agonizing, frustrating, humiliating. But at this point, it's been a true blessing, not only to my finances, but to my spiritual walk with God. And I'm thankful, and I want to give him all the thanks and all the praise and all the glory for all that he has done. And that's the purpose of this video. And whoever ends up watching this, I hope you learn the lesson of a true spiritual walk with God. You guys have a blessed day.